Hello, my name's Al and today I'm going to run you through a few pre-ride trips before you go out and hit the trails. Presuming your bike's in pretty good nick, there's not a lot that you need in order to prime your bike ready for the trails. You're going to need a track pump, some chain lube and some oil, some lubricant for your suspension seals and your dropper post, a torque wrench, a shock pump if you've got suspension on your bike, and that's about it. First thing we're going to do is make sure that nothing's going to fall off your bike. So we're going to check a few key bolts to make sure they're torqued correctly. The most important of which will be your bar and stem. We don't want anything coming loose on the front of the bike. Preferably use a torque wrench and set it to the correct torque setting. Most stems will have a torque setting on them. If not, you can find out from the manufacturer. In this instance, it's 5 Newton meters. I'm just going to run over the bolts. Make sure that everything's done up as it should be. When you tighten the bar clamp, always alternate between the bolts. If they're especially loose, do them little bit by bit. Same's true of the stem. Just check that they're good and tight and that nothing's going to rattle loose. Another key point to note, especially if you've just got the bike out the back of the car, is to make sure that your wheels are properly secured. So with a quick release or a bolt through such as this, then we're looking to have the quick release build up tension when it's about halfway closed, and then it should take a firm push to close it. Then we know there's no chance of that wheel falling out. Next up, we're just going to check our tyre pressure. Tyres do go down over time. Even over the space of a week, they will lose some pressure. So whether you run tubeless or tubed, give them a quick top up, check them before you hit the trails. We've already worked out what tyre pressures we like to run on this bike, and we've noted them down on the track pump. So it's much easier than guessing every time. Now, it's a big volume pump there. That's just got us to the right pressure pretty much straight away. If you want to be really accurate with your tyre pressures, and it does pay to do so, then don't rely on the gauge on your pump. Get yourself a digital pressure gauge like this and get it right to the PSI. With our tyre pressures set, we're next going to check the pressures in our fork and our shock. Remove the valve cap from the Schrader valve. Make sure you put it somewhere safe, because you do want to refit that. Otherwise you'll be blowing dirt into your air chamber every time you inflate your shock. Now we're ready to fit our shock pump. Just screw it on enough for the pressure to register on the gauge, and then give it a quarter of a turn, no more. Inflate the shock to your desired pressure. It's a good idea to record this as well. So we've got that at 210, which is just right for me on this bike. And then we unscrew the pump as quickly as possible. You will hear some air hiss out, but don't worry, that's just the air coming out of the pump. So the pressure inside your shock should remain the same. And then we're refitting our dust cap. Repeat for the forks, and as long as you've not played with your rebound or compression adjustments, then your fork and your shock should all be set up. Dry seals on your dropper post and your fork and your shock will not only create extra stiction, which means that your suspension will be less supple, it'll also mean that the seals won't do such a good job with keeping dirt at bay. So it's a good idea to keep them lubricated. If you do this before you ride, then you'll minimise stiction and help to prolong the life of your unit. Here we've got a couple of options to lubricate those seals. So first of all, we've got some good old wet lube. So this is fine to use on seals as well as your chain. So if you want a cheap option, that's a good one to choose. We're going to lubricate our seals with this silicone lubricant. Give it a good shake before you use it. If you spray it onto a rag, as long as it's nice and clean, then you'll do a better job of applying it. You're less likely to get it on your brakes, which will cause all kinds of contamination issues. So give the stanchion a good wipe down, and also give the seal a good clean. Hopefully your bike's pretty clean already, but this will just get everything set up and ready to ride. If you compress the fork a few times, if it is dirty, you'll get a ring of dirt appear around the fork, and just wipe that off, and that's that stanchion done. The principle is exactly the same for your shock and dropper post. Final thing we're going to do before we ride is we're going to look after our chain. So this is a kind of a dry lube. So your chain should be fairly clean if you're using a lubricant like this. We're just going to back pedal, apply lots of lubricant. It's very light lube, it won't last very long. You do need to reapply it almost every ride, but it means you don't have to clean your chain so often. Once your chain's looking fairly clean, good idea just to give it another quick coat. And that's it, ready to ride. If you use a more traditional lube, such as this wet lube, this will last a hell of a lot longer than any of the dry lubes out there. It will lubricate your chain really well, but it can be a bit mucky. And what we'll do is we'll apply the lube, and then we'll wipe off the excess. We won't lube it again. And the idea is that we're lubing the rollers and the pins in the chain, and that will cut down on the friction without having oil on the outside of the chain, which will attract dirt. So whilst what we've shown you isn't a replacement for maintenance, it should keep your bike tip-top in between rides, as long as you're getting it serviced, washing it, etc. And then yeah, it'll all be ready to get out, hit the trails. Thanks for watching, see you next time.